Hello, cosmic beings out there. I'm Mannah, a therapeutic astrologer and interviewer. I'm passionate about learning and sharing insights on how to live a better life. I hope you'll stick around as I infiltrate the minds of thought leaders, authors, and healers from around the globe. Wherever you find yourself right now, dear listener, I want you to remember that you have a place to call whole. Now please enjoy this episode. Hi everyone, today I'm together with David Polidi that I'm really excited to speak with. He is a therapist and a specialist in EMDR and IFS, the integration of those modalities. Welcome, David.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
There's a little short introduction there because I know there's more to say, and also your podcast. I found you through that, and it's called Empowered Through Compassion, right?
Yes, yes.
So there's something about compassion and then this love of the two modalities, EMDR and IFS. I got that correct. Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
definitely.
And so the listeners have actually heard about in this podcast. So there's other information sources, right? But in this podcast, we've also talked about EMDR. But the difference is that now I'm actually on a training in it. So at the time, I wasn't as familiar with it that I am now. So and that's what keeps it interesting is doing it, like getting some practice yourself with it rather than just listening to it. So maybe this
Yes.
also for people, you'll tune into this once you're there where you want to experiment with this practice. So what is it, David, that you love about EMDR and parts work together?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, again, it's really nice to meet you and to be here with your audience. And I think that there's so many really interesting things out there in the world, which is so important because there's so much suffering and so much need for trauma healing. And when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking that, I think I really love integration. And I feel like, I've been in the field for a little while, and I've always kind of seen myself or labeled myself as eclectic when it comes to therapy. And I think that we're always, in my mind, weaving together various frameworks to try to understand what makes the most sense for us, what makes the most sense for the person that's sitting opposite us that we're doing therapy with. And so we're trying to take what we can to find the truth within that person and to help them find the truth within themselves and to lead the happiest, best, life that they can. I think that both IFS and EMDR and many other models as well um, have a lot of alignment when it comes to it. They just have their own language, they have their own concepts. So when I was thinking about this question for you, I was thinking like, okay, I imagine it as like a mountain, almost like Lord of the Rings. I've been doing this thing on my podcast where I try to talk about IFS and EMDR, but relate it to popular culture and movies, television. So if you've seen Lord of the Rings, I just imagine this big mountain, and they have this scene where um, Gandalf is leading them all into the mountain, and there's a doorway. It's like a magic doorway, and they have to get the right spell to go through it. Um, I feel like these modalities, the models of therapy, EMDR, IFS, MI, motivational interviewing, nonviolent communication, whatever model it is that you're working with or understanding, um, they're a doorway. And then they have tunnels that go in, and the tunnels might intersect, and there's a lot of mazes as you're going through. But ultimately, we need to focus on the treasure, which we're going after, which is in the middle of the mountain, which is this, beautiful thing of gold, which is the healing.
Mm.
And so EMDR is a doorway, IFS is a doorway, and then what I kind of stumbled on is that you could also have this other new doorway of IFS informed EMDR, and that becomes a doorway. So yeah,
I mean, well, it's so interesting. How is IFS informed EMDR different?
IFS informed EMDR different from EMDR.
Yeah, from the combination of the two.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you're going to combine them. So I learned a lot from my mentor, Bruce Hersey, who has the Syzygy Institute here. And so, that, and there's others too that I've come across in my travels who are just amazing. And a lot of people. Janina Fisher is one, Annabelle McGoldrick is one. Um, but how I like to view it based on, the teachings of these people is that you have a map of EMDR, you have a map of IFS, and when you layer them together, it just gives us even more information on our internal system and how to navigate that. So
Mm.
specifically, if you're looking at IFS with this understanding of the multiplicity of the mind and of all these parts that are inside of you, and then self energy, which also comes in, to the system when the parts are relaxed back. Now you mix that with EMDR. I think you could go to these parts, find, who are the loudest ones in the room, who are the protectors, who are the exiles, and along that journey, you could offer specific EMDR techniques to the different parts. So you're not just going to run in and do EMDR and trample on protectors or activate these really disturbing, harsh trauma memories without first seeing like what is the landscape? Do we have permission of everybody? And then you could ask parts, how would you like to do EMDR? And EMDR, when done in this way, it's using the bilateral, as you know, it's done to really facilitate self energy because we're resourcing self energy. And then it's to facilitate that connection between the client and their parts and to make that stronger and stronger. And then to even reprocess or, if you're a Bruce Ecker fan, reconsolidate some of the memories within some of the exiles.
Amazing. I need to hear a little bit more about that last part. But that is what makes so much sense is that we're not bypassing anyone and that we are getting the permission and like you said, we are aware of the internal landscape before we just do something to it. And also the idea that who is it who is getting the reprocessing, right? It's parts of us who's carrying these traumas. That I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and what you were saying something here in the end. I'm not sure I got it with reprocessing with the exiles. What can you?
Yeah, okay. I just threw that in at the end.
Okay.
So you're good. You're good. Yeah, what I was referring to is in Bruce Hersey's model, the Syzygy model of IFS EMDR, they really have this trifecta approach where although they call it IIE, IFS informed EMDR,
Mhm.
the third model that they bring in is this work by Bruce Ecker and some of his colleagues, which talks about memory reconsolidation. And he has found how, through his model and his work, there are certain steps that are needed to be able to actually literally transform emotional memory so that you no longer feel it in your body and that's the reactivation, a juxtaposition. So the result when it's activated, something new is going to happen, and then you repeat that over and over and over again. The body actually learns a new way of responding to that trigger.
Ah, That's what we want, right?
Right.
That's
Right. And it's automatic. So what's
mm,
beautiful about it is that you don't need to when you're going through a difficult time, you don't need to stop and say, okay, I'm triggered. Let me think about what do I need to think? What do I need to do? Just automatically, effortlessly, our
mm,
body just no longer feels activated.
mm,
And he identified a whole bunch of different models of therapy that have those steps in their own way built into the models. And one of them was IFS and one of them was EMDR. So
mm.
they all really fit in well with each other.
Wonderful. I mean, we do share that signature in the birth chart around liking, loving, feeling almost like a life path to synthesize different modalities. So the two of us share that. Hopefully, curious listeners will as well. It feels so good because, I mean, synthesizing is the outcome. Putting together is the outcome. The actual core of the symbolism is love of truth. Do you recognize that?
That resonates. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Many ways to get there, but like, yeah. I mean, and it underscores that it's true, right? When there's more modalities leading to the same field.
And yes, and I do feel like ultimate truth is really this one thing. And in some weird way, I feel like, I often talk of religion and spirituality, and I love that. And I love how IFS seems to open the door and bring in some of these religious concepts, spiritual concepts. Same with the MDR. And it's always dependent on your client and if they want to go there or not. But the way that I define spirituality for me and even religion is that it's like the sun, and you have all these rays coming out, and everybody's on their own path to the sun, but ultimately you're all leading to the sun.
Mm. Yeah, wonderful. So, what is that for you? What is, I mean, because you use the word compassion there in the title of your podcast. I mean, but what is spirituality for you when you say it like that? What is the sun?
Oh God, I don't know. That's such a good question. Um, I don't know if I know what it is, other than it's something that's beautiful, radiating, loving. I have two words well, three words in my title of my website, my podcast, my business. It's empowered through compassion. So
Mhm.
compassion is definitely the heart of it. I think you hit that right on the head. And I have a lot of heroes. One of my biggest heroes is the Dalai Lama and compassion. And so I think that's such an important part of all of this. And then I'm also a social worker. And so helping people, especially disenfranchised people, feel their own worth and their own power, and to become more empowered is crucially important. And I think the quickest way, the best way to empower somebody with real strength is compassion.
Mhm.
So it's how do we empower ourselves through compassion?
So, how do you see that when we do have when we do have these structures to follow? Where does compassion come in? I mean, it must kind of just go through everything, the compassion factor, but it it's not enough, right? It's not enough being compassionate with the client for the healing to occur. Because since we're doing all of these different interventions.
Well, I feel like it's a both and. I feel like it's enough and it's everything and it's not enough and you need more. I think we have these other interventions so that we could really tap into our compassion. They're tools, they're ways so that we could really reach into our own compassion, reach into our own clients' compassion and help them feel something that they haven't felt before, validated, seeing something in a new way that's going to help that healing take place within them. All of these models will say, and we could get started on why there needs to be models in the first place, and the whole business of our field. But that aside, I think that these models really are there saying the wisdom is already there and it's already inside our clients, and we are guides to be with them as they explore their wisdom and kind of call the shots on how that's even going to look.
Mm. Oh,
And we're giving them permission to do that. We're having the entire hour or however long we're going to spend and say our focus is going to be on you, and we're going to try to take our part and what we're going through and relax them back. And for this hour, we're just going to really witness what you're going through and kind of allow that magic to happen. But the magic doesn't happen because of something that EMDR came up with or something that IFS came up with. The magic is already inside of them.
oh, wonderful. So that's the spiritual core of it, is that the healing, it's already there. But then, and then you say the intervention is a way to, I don't know, release that, or
To access it.
to access.
IFS would ask the question, you have this sun inside of you, and the sun is this divine, essence that is connecting to your truth, but also connecting you to everybody else on this planet, and even in the past, future. So I think the question is, if you're not fully feeling that every single day, which nobody is, nobody, if you're not, then what's getting in the way of that? And let's create a little bit of space to listen to what are these parts that are coming up inside of you? Why have they formed? What are they protecting you from? What are they wanting to tell you? What message is it? And you look at our society today, I mean, we have so much trauma that we're holding on to, and that's just trapped inside of the cultures of us, that our bodies reflect that and pick that up and take that on. And so in that way, I feel like by healing an individual, you're little by little also healing the collective.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's so important to go to your therapy, right? I mean, yeah, to do the work on yourself and others. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about chronic pain. And it's just a curiosity of mine. So I wonder if you have any, I'm sure you have some experiences with it. But what experiences you have with it when clients come, apropos the body, right? Holding trauma there, having probably overstepped their own boundaries too many times, and now it just hurts. Because, I mean, first of all, might happen to need an alternative to the eye movements, because that could be painful. So there's that. But what about, because I've had a few clients come to me, I mean, quite a lot, with chronic pain. It might not even be the reason why they come, it's just also there.
Mm,
And I feel it's so important. Actually, David, I want to share with you that I don't have contact with my family, but my mother has chronic pain. So I feel, I mean, on some level, every client I have, I think I'm still trying to heal my mother. But especially, it's an extra layer to that is when someone has the same symptoms, right? So I do feel, I really want to help, but it's also such a complex area where they might go along with something and then afterwards tell me that it just, that the pain increased from it, even though they didn't say it in the moment that we did it. Do you have any
mm.
experiences with this?
Yeah, I do. I'm also like the therapist part inside of me is like, oh, I totally want to dive into what you just said. But I'm like, no, I'm not your therapist. I don't want to cross any of those boundaries. And if it feels okay, um, would it be okay? Does it feel okay to just spend a little bit of time on what you said?
You're welcome. Anything.
Okay. And please stop me at
Mm.
any time if it's getting too deep or we're going, over any kind of, realm that you don't feel comfortable in. Um, because what's so interesting to me with what you said was that part of the IFS informed EMDR, and this is something that I think maybe some EMDR people are doing this more and more, but I think this is maybe a contribution that the IFS side gives to EMDR, which is really to look at the therapist and what's coming up inside of the therapist before they even enter the room, the therapy room. Or when they do enter in the therapy room, what parts are getting activated and what are those parts trying to tell us? And they have this cool intervention or thing that we could do. Podcast, I'd edit this out so that nobody hears me stumbling. But I'm stumbling for the word. It's yeah, they have this thing that's great, and I have this book that's coming out, and a lot of amazing authors are in this book. And one of the chapters is actually on this exercise that you could do with clients, and it's called the fire drill. And the fire drill, if the therapist is doing the fire drill from on themselves, you'd be sitting with a client and you'd say, "Oh, what parts are coming up inside of me? Okay, can I
Mhm.
just for a moment, I don't want to like distract myself too much and not listen to my client, but to really help me listen more, could I just quickly ask my parts, could they give me a little bit of room? Could they give me a little bit of space and maybe I could listen to them after the session or tonight before I go to bed? But, could they give me room and could I just acknowledge what's coming up inside of me? So when we're talking about somatic body work and we're talking about helping people heal from chronic pain, I'm hearing that for you, there's certain parts that are already just like, ooh, I want to speak just because of your experience. And I'd be curious, like, do those parts hold some wisdom that are really important in that moment? Or would you be able to say to them, could you kind of relax back so we could really focus on the client? Because sometimes they could be bringing something into that world and into the therapy just by being there.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's so important that you bring this up. It really is. It's a game changer, I think, in therapy. I mean, for me at least, to have that internal focus as well, being here with me and being with the client. So and I'm definitely aware of the a little red flag that came up when I said that. Okay, are you still trying to heal your mother? So I mean, I think it's more on this level where it's not actually what's happening in the situation. I just think about it like that. I think, okay, probably I do have an extra interest in this for some reason. I mean, I think, don't you think it can be non-pathological? Don't you think it can be free from burdens that it doesn't have to come from a very burdened place that you would like to heal something that your mother has dealt with? I mean, that would give anyone some kind of release, I think, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. No, I think there's so many different ways to that like answers that are coming up in my mind. I mean, on the one hand, I feel like to some degree, we're all wounded healers,
Yeah.
myself included. Like we're all drawn to this field for a reason.
Mhm.
And parts will come up and be activated. It does not always mean that they are burdened, by any means. And I think that and it could just be parts that are interested in the work, just like you said, because it's like, okay, this was in my past, this has happened to me, so I'm interested in it. And even just that awareness of like noticing, like, okay,
Mhm.
that's where that part is from, that's what it's saying to me, that would really help that part just like relax back, even just to acknowledge that, to acknowledge that part, like, I see you. I see you. You want to be here because this is meaningful to you, and maybe you're not hurting, maybe you're not suffering, maybe you're just excited about the work that we're about to do. So even just that noticing, I think, is really important.
Right. Okay. Well, I recognize that then. Absolutely. With clients who come with these pains.
So then that's the first step. But then the second step to your
Mhm.
question, okay, so we noticed our parts, relax back. Then it's like, okay, so you're asking when somebody is hurting, I might need the question again, but it's like, how do I work with them, or how do I see that? Because I see that as being very connected to IFS again, and EMDR, where we it's a somatic kind of understanding of your body is feeling different things. This is a way that your body is trying to communicate to you, and they might not have words, or maybe you could turn to it and there will be words or images or other things, but even in pain there's some wisdom that it's trying to give to you. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm eager to ask. It's just that they can say yes in the moment and say it's fine in the moment, and then afterwards, it's the whole system is very upset and it's painful again.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so they're wanting you to do the work, but then after the work is done, there's some kind of
Then they notice,
activation or something
yeah,
that's going on that doesn't feel good.
they notice then, okay, it was too much in the moment. I shouldn't have done that because that's the core of the issue, is we don't know when it's enough until it's way too much.
So there might not be any way to avoid that, right? In that moment, because if you're asking a client, do I have permission? How does it feel? Stop me at any point, taking it slow, checking in. And if I'm hearing you correctly, the client's like, I'm good, I'm good. And maybe in EMDR speak, you did a lot of, phase two. So they're resource, they have the resource, they have the containers, they have safe place. And so it's like, okay, well, we're moving along in the therapy, and now all of a sudden, there's some kind of thing that happened that afterwards blows up. I think then it comes in my mind to, okay, well, how are we going to deal with this? This feeling that they have, that things blew up. How are we going to be able to go back to our safe place, or get back to a place where we can put it in a container, or just even noticing like what parts are really upset and how could we listen to those parts? And then I think the key is, next time, what
Yeah.
are we going to do differently? Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to take that mistake, so to speak, and how are we going to learn from it? And how are we going to use it as a stepping stone so that we could hopefully avoid this from replicating itself again?
Yeah, for sure. Because of the issues in me just mentioned, that's the worst case scenario, is that I did something that was more upsetting to the client, right? That's what we don't, at least rather just neutral than something that's more upsetting. But of course,
Well,
then,
and I will say too that sometimes that's the way that healing
yeah,
goes. Like,
yeah,
healing is not very linear. And sometimes we are going to be activating things that are going to be really difficult, but
mm,
that's like the way through the storm is through the storm.
yeah,
And so we're going through it. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. Like, of course, I never want somebody to suffer
no,
more, or really hurt or feel pain. I never want that. And as long as we are with a client, they feel to us like they have enough resources, they have enough sense of how to get back to safety, and they're choosing themselves, or all their parts are choosing, I want to move forward with this. I don't think we need to be afraid of pain. I don't think we need to run away or avoid it, because then I think we might miss some of the core pieces of this work.
yeah, no, you're right. There's a way in that. There's a process in that as well. The reason why I feel like asking you about this is, I I wonder why it can seem quite inviting for people pleasers to just say, yeah, my SUD is down. When we do in EMDR, the baseline, kind of checking in, how uncomfortable are you now? Where are you at with this? And if you just would like to soothe the therapist, then maybe you're not completely honest. You're maybe not even able to feel it because you really want it to be okay with a therapist. I feel that EMDR is more than other methods inviting the people pleaser somehow. Do you recognize that? It's my interpretation.
I think you definitely have stumbled on some wisdom there. That's a great insight. I mean, let's look at EMDR for a moment. it's an amazing magical process, and there is so much wisdom within it. So I never want to take that away. I really, it's changed my life in a lot of ways. And Francine Shapiro was writing a book and creating a model that she had to get approved within a community of very kind of data-driven scientific minds. And so she used this, I think, to help prove that it's evidence-based. And I don't, I'll talk just for myself. I think if we really respect her model and understand it, we could also have some flexibility within that model, that we could say, I'm going to check the suds, but maybe I'm going to do it just by asking the client, how are they feeling? How intense is it? Maybe I don't need a number. Maybe I use a color. I don't know. But I think that when we get too focused on following the protocol exactly as it is written, and we lose that connection that we have with the person, with the human being sitting right in front of us, I think that could lead to problems.
Oh yeah, that's dangerous. Right, yeah. You just get so caught up in it. But even if that doesn't happen, even if the therapist is feeling, I'm in my compassionate space, then the client, because of this trauma, because of this traumatic adaptation, can think the situation is elsewise. Is that a word?
Yeah,
Elsewise.
yeah.
Different, yeah. Then,
No, I think that
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And then my question is to you. See, this is where I love to just ask questions to the interviewer. But then my question is then how do we connect in a way that we could really kind of help the client to see that? How do we understand that is the process that's happening in that moment? And then how do we help the client to see that and then make some decisions together on how do we want to move forward with this new part that just popped its head up? That is the work right there.
Yeah. And so how do you say that? How would you frame if you're just working with this one part and you would go through the bilateral simulation? How would you frame it to the client that it's only this part of the client that is getting healed? Or how do you talk about it?
Hmm. That's such an interesting question. I love it. I love it. Well, okay, so I'll go back to the Syzygy model. And again, what I love about it, and there's others, right, that do this too, but the Syzygy model is really all inclusive, I feel,
Mm,
in saying really kind of giving direction as to when to use the bilateral and not just put it in anywhere. And so they actually have their own protocols of how to use it with protectors and
mm,
how to use it with exiles. You notice what parts are there, and we're always going to be addressing the loudest part in the room. And if
mm,
there's another part that'll come in, all right, would you be able to just relax back, take a little bit of a moment, or do you really, really need to be heard? And we allow the client to decide, what are the parts saying? But we're focusing on the loudest one.
mm,
And then as we're focusing on that, the EMDR, the bilateral, is about creating that connection. And so I guess I'm assuming, and there's always I could be mistaken with this, so this is not 100%. Usually, a lot of times when we're meeting somebody, we're first going to be working with protectors.
mm,
So then we see the protector, and even if there's an exile that pops up, okay, but there's probably some protectors that are floating around that exile. So let's first start with the protectors and see, um, what is it that what is their intention,
mm.
and getting to know them. If at that moment, at that point, while we're getting to know them, there's any of the eight C's or any of the, are you familiar with the eight C's? Is your
Yeah,
audience?
the qualities of the self,
That's
right?
right. So if any if any self energy qualities arise, we could tap them in. Those could be resources. We could use that as a resource. And then as we're getting to know this protector, what Bruce says is You could do he takes Popke's and Knipe's work where they were working with level of urge to use for addictions. And he says, what is your urge to protect? So if we have a positive protector intention, and then we say, okay, how much do you feel like you need to protect the system right now from a 1 to a 7?
Ah, yeah.
And then we could use that as kind of applying EMDR or bilateral simulation to this protector just to get to know it better. And what he has found is you don't want to keep going back to, instead of the SUDS, it's the level of urge to protect, so the LOP. Instead of going back to the level of urge to protect, you just ask it once. It's going to go down, but you don't want the protector to feel like the only goal is to get them to feel less like they want to protect. You want to give them the message that we just really want to get to know you better and
Yeah.
understand why you feel this energy around protecting. And a lot of times what will happen is as you move forward doing the bilateral and seeing what comes up, there's going to be an exile that pops its head up. And
Mm.
now you're in essence separating the protector, the exile, and the self energy. And once you have that, for dual functional dual awareness, which you need in EMDR, you need like these two different sides. You need that juxtaposition. And so what that becomes in this model is the exile and the self energy. So you're going to the exile and doing EMDR, and you're saying, what is the image that is coming up for you right now? Where are you right now that's hurting so badly? And then what is it that you believe about yourself, the negative cognition? And then you're asking the self energy, well, what does the self energy want to say to this exile? What is the belief that the self energy knows is true? That's the positive cognition. And then where do you feel the part in your body? And then you do EMDR protocol.
Mm.
And
Well,
so if there's other parts that come in, you let them in, right? This is where we go into the AIP from EMDR. And we say the body knows how to heal. And as long as we have a critical amount of self energy and we've identified the part, in this case, the exile that we're working with, we're now at a place where we could just trust wherever the part and the person's body is going to take us and their mind is going to take us is going to be the right place.
amazing. That is what is so brilliant because it is separate. I mean, where does the positive cognition come from anyway, right? It must be from self quality, from self energy.
And what I love about it too is that people always, I found to me, a lot of people would ask, like, well, are you asking like how I felt back then? Are you asking how I feel right now? Or is it
Yes.
like, what am I thinking? There's that confusion.
Yeah.
So this takes that away. It's like, no, ask the part that's, where it is right now. How is it feeling? Ask the part what it's thinking. And then this like timeless essence of the self energy is also responding.
Yeah. Like, what does it know to really be true about you? Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Also, I just had a comment when you were sharing about the protectors. They shouldn't perceive it as if we're trying to get rid of them or something. These are my words. But that's the same point I had around the people pleasing parts, right? We don't want them to perceive this. So I really think that is good to be aware of in the way that, yeah, in the way that we ask the questions, maybe even, but just that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, really good, really good. It gives so much hope when we can blend it out, right? And say, okay, this is what I know to be true, and this is what is driving my life at the moment, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's exciting. It's exciting. And it feels like it's kind of at the forefront in a way of all of these healing modalities and helping people with, again, I think there's so much trauma out there. So any way that we're able to help with it, I
Mm,
think, why not kind of use it?
yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna look here. Um, see, I also wanted to just talk with you a little bit about astrology. How do you feel about astrology and your own astrology, if you know it?
I love it.
Okay.
I would say I probably don't know it a lot. I'm open, definitely, and I'd love to talk about it. And it's interesting to me. I definitely would be, somebody that's just amateur at best. And, I think I think again, there's a lot of integration with charts and signs and archetypes,
Mhm.
stories, parts of ourselves. There feels like there's a lot of congruence there. I just would say about me that I probably don't know tons.
Yeah, sure. Oh, but you do have that curiosity, and even though what we were speaking about earlier with the compassion and also the synthesizing, I get nervous even saying that word, but like combining stuff, that also adheres to Pisces and Sagittarius. You are actually a Virgo sun, right? You know that. You're a Virgo sun, but
I
you're
don't even know what that means. I'll be
well,
honest. I know that with my birthday that I'm a Virgo, but
yes.
I don't know the difference between a sun and a moon or
Okay.
rising, setting, all of that stuff.
Okay, good. So, but so that's just the same. Just a way of saying it. So it's just that that's where the sun was at when you were born.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So and that, but it's in the third house, and that is the life area of curiosity and wanting to know different things. And when Virgo is there, you're gonna wanna be as good as you can. You don't ever feel good enough in it, but you want to be specialized in all the things. So it can be really
That's me.
difficult,
That's me.
difficult to choose. And then the compassion part, and mm, that is the moon conjunct Neptune. So it's not, it's just, I wanted to say to people who know astrology that even though you could sound like a Pisces, you're actually the opposite. You're actually Virgo. But the thing is that your moon is connected to Neptune. So that brings that same Piscean quality of, yeah, like just the way that you speak about healing, and one client at the time healing the world, and just having that. I feel that when I listen to your podcast as well, the warmth in you, right? The natural warmth in you, and wanting to be that for other people is really big and generous. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, about your astrology right now, it's really interesting because you just mentioned the wounded healer and the planet, to call it that, uh, Chiron, that we relate to the wounded healer archetype. You're in your Chiron return. So it means it has this orbit of 50 to 51 years, 49, 51 years. And you right now, like your Chiron is in 20 degrees Aries. You were born with that. And now in the collective energy, Chiron is in 20 degrees Aries. So that's it's like a milestone, or it's like a period of time where I don't know how it feels to you. What are you going through? Are you going through something where you can see this paradox of Chiron, where it is both the wound and it's the healing, but also the healing and the mastery that you got from actually also having been hurt? Do you
So
recognize?
I'll get very personal with you. How does that feel? I'll get
I
personal.
would love it. I would love it.
All right, good, good, good. No, I feel very comfortable with you. I like you a lot. And I'm struggling right now, I think. Struggling, not struggling. I think, my family is good, thank God, and my daughter and my wife. And I feel like I'm having a hard time with where the world is at,
Yeah.
and trying to wrap my head around it, and trying to hearing clients who are suffering with the politics in America and all over, and feeling like, that powerlessness, and feeling that like I want to keep a hold to my values and nonviolence and all the things that I deeply, deeply believe in. And then also feeling this anger, this real kind of raw hurting, and feeling like this is not okay what's happening right now.
Mm,
And, there needs to be stopped, but not quite feeling hopeful at times, I think,
mm,
that it's going to be. And that
mm.
scares me.
For sure. Or it's you're saying some really keywords around this Chiron and Aries, because that is definitely the high version of it. Is absolutely non-violent because it's has a sophisticated nature, but in Aries, that is a potential for violence. So the way that the higher version of Chiron would relate would be like what you are just saying, but then also I feel like when you speak this impulse to, okay, is there something we can do, right? Is there some kind of activism, some kind of action plan, something that where you can actually do something about stuff, right? I think that's something what is on the table here for Chiron with you at this moment, because I'm with you. When we can't act, when we are powerless, then that's that's really
Right.
demotivating. Yeah. Um. So that's, yeah. I'm curious to see what could that be for you. I mean, you're doing your work in the world. Maybe in this period something more is gonna show up for you. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It even comes down to like something as so silly as my next podcast. I haven't put it out yet, but I wanted to write about it. I was talking about Back to the Future with somebody. And have you seen Back to the Future?
Yeah, way back.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the second one? You remember the second one?
I don't think I can remember stuff like that like you do.
Okay. If I start talking about it, would it maybe bring it up or?
I don't think so. I think you have many
Okay.
references, and I forget those.
Oh, okay.
But
I'll say maybe for your audience,
maybe the
but I'll say it very
listeners.
quickly. I'll say
Sure.
it.
Well,
In the second Back to the Future, there's Marty McFly and he's going with Doc and they're going into this futuristic time, which ironically is 2015, right? So, but that's the future back then. And then he finds his almanac, and the almanac shows for the last 50 years or whatnot, all the winners of all the games, of all the sports.
mhm.
And so Biff, the bully, goes, takes the almanac, goes back to 1955 and gives it to his younger self. And so Biff is able to make all these bets and make millions and millions and millions as much as he wants. And so Marty and Doc go back to his time on the timeline, which is 1985, but it's an alternative universe. It's an alternative place where now Biff owns a casino or multiple casinos. He has all this money. He's in a hot tub with these women. He's married to Marty's mother, and they based him on Trump. And so I was kind of in this place of, how much do I want to make this parallel in writing about it and talking about it with Trump? Because a part of me is like, well, I don't want to piss off everybody that, doesn't believe what I believe in. But then another part of me is like, no, but I do want to be really honest about these are things that I'm grappling with because that was, in all essence, like this really traumatic reality in the Back to the Future universe where there was tons of destruction, terror, and it was just that was the dystopian view with Trump in charge. And that was what they created years ago. It's actually living itself out today. And so I found it fascinating. And that's where it's like I talk to my wife and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. But it's like how much to be real and put that out without also making others feel isolated or getting backlash, or, God forbid, um, his buddy there, Musk, is listening in on my AI machine, and there's going to be repercussions because I'm writing all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
who knows? But,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, how much do we put ourselves out there? How much do we hold back? I think I've been grappling with that lately.
Oh, I mean, I'm so glad you said all of that and informed me in this way. And I also really love how I can say so little and I don't even feel like, oh, my words are not really coming through. And then you just check completely into the archetype of what I'm talking about. So I really like that. I like that. So it seems that it's very present for you at this time. That's good. So yeah, we'll be tuning in to see what happens and however you want to convey that and send that out into the
Oh, good, good.
it's I understand you. It's that balance of being brave and then also being sensible.
But also wanting to speak
Also,
what you feel
yeah.
is, it's important to speak what you know is true, I think. I
Yes.
think, we don't want anything back happen again like Germany 1933. We want to be able to speak. We have to. We have to put out our truth and be able to listen to one another. I think that's crucial in these times.
Thank you for saying that. So there you got your answer.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
get that up. Oh, really good. David, we're at the top of the hour, and I know you have clients waiting in the Zoom room, maybe.
It was such a pleasure talking with you,
Yeah.
chatting. Oh, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
This is a question that I've been on my own search. Do you have a favorite movie or television show, or is there anything right now that's just gripping your interest?
Wow. Is that something you ask people about?
Well, yeah, my new thing is that I want to bring IFS and EMDR into pop culture.
Mm.
So to like, I love talking with clients because it gives you a kind of an insight into where they're at. But I think with us too, it humanizes all of us, and it's like, okay, well, how could we take something completely random or seemingly so, and how could we break it down and deconstruct it with some of these theories? So it started with trying to do that to Wicked and talking about how all of us have these parts, Alphaba and Glinda. We all have those inside of us. And then kind of springboarding from there to see like how could we just take down some of like what is going out there in popular culture, and how do we see it through this psychological lens?
That is really good. I do that with everyone in a way, with people. Also, I'm also a social worker and I work in the field of addiction. So I actually do it with people I meet there. I'm like, these are all parts of me somewhere, right?
Yes, yes.
They're representing different. Yeah,
Like for instance, do you ever watch Friends?
I don't. Oh,
So
sorry.
they have characters. They have characters that's like Joey,
Yeah, I know them.
Monica,
I know them.
Ross.
I
So,
just, I can't watch anything twice. That's my problem.
oh,
So I do know them. Yeah.
okay. So my point was, we all have a Monica, we all have a Joey, we all have a Ross, we all have those, each one of those archetypes somewhere inside of us.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that is really interesting. Yeah, and you're talking about it like archetypes. Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah, because we people check into archetypes, and so it's all part of the field. I don't even know if I can answer your question, David. Can I come back to you on that because
Oh, well, we'll have to be back in touch, and
it's gonna be
we'll
a
just have
long.
to connect again.
I think we have to because, like I was saying before, I remember I don't remember these sort of things. It just I see something, I forget all about it. So you're a little bit more nerdy in that field than me. I like it. I like it a lot.
Probably, yes.
I like it. And again, you're like relating things, right? You're putting it all together. Nice.
Yeah, yes, yes, definitely, definitely.
Thank you so much for being
Yeah, thank you.
part of
To be
this.
continued.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that for
Okay.